Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Miss Jade. I'm currently the head of English at Victory Heights, and today I'll be talking through some strategies that we use at school and that you can use at home to support your child's development in phonics and reading. When we talk about reading, we're talking about two main components. We have the decoding. This is where children are applying their phonics knowledge, and also oral language comprehension skills. This is where children are showing an understanding of the new vocabulary they're being exposed to, and the ability to discuss and talk about books that they have read. If your child is in Key Stage 1, they are currently in the early reading phase. This is where they are being exposed to phonics daily and given opportunities to apply this phonics knowledge to blend and decode new words. They will also look at comprehension skills such as predicting, so making predictions about what might happen in a story, what might happen next. Looking at context clues, so using the pictures to help them with that understanding, and then some of the lower order thinking skills, so summarizing the main events, talking about the key characters in the story. And then the children in Key Stage 2, most of our children in Key Stage 2 are now developed readers, and they are using their phonics knowledge from Key Stage 1 to read more challenging words confidently. And they will be looking at higher order thinking skills and questioning. So you can see from the chart here that this is our color-coded reading scheme books that we have at Victory Heights. We have color-coded our books because we use a range of reading schemes to expose the children to different books, and we have banded these at the same level. So we use our color coding system, and you can see there at the end of each year group from FS2 to year 2 where the children should be. Obviously, all children do learn at different rates, and your child, you might be looking at this and thinking, oh, but my child's in year 1 and they're still on yellow books or they're still on blue books. We do have reading interventions, and again, those daily phonics lessons will really help develop the children's reading. However, this is why it's really important that the children are also reading at home daily. So the main way we teach reading at school, particularly in Key Stage 1, is through phonics. And phonics is the method of teaching how to read and write based on sound. So if your child was previously at a school that wasn't a British curriculum school, then they might not have been exposed to phonics before. But we use this as our main strategy for teaching early reading and early writing. It's all about splitting words into the 44 English language sounds. There are 6 phases in phonics, and children will begin learning phonics straight from FS1, where they'll be exposed to environmental sounds, instrumental sounds, and then working all the way up to phase 6, which the children should be on by year 2. And this is where they're learning alternative sounds. So within each phonics phase, there are a set of sounds that the children will learn, and they will learn to apply these in both their reading and their writing. And then also they've got their tricky words. So these are the words that the children, they're not phonetically decodable. They just have to look at these words and be able to recognize them and read them. And these are the words you see more commonly in books and in stories. They come up more frequently, so the children just need to learn these. At Victory Heights, we have our own VH phonics scheme, and this was created by taking the best of all the phonics schemes to be able to provide the children with lots of different ways of learning. So for example, we have the Jolly Phonics Rhymes, particularly used in the foundation stage. This is when the children are learning the initial sounds. We use Read, Write, Ink, which will help us with our letter formation. We use linguistic phonics, which helps us develop our phonics and spelling program up all the way into Key Stage 2. But for our Key Stage 1 children who are being exposed to discrete daily phonics lessons, this is how the phonics lessons work. We review and recap. We do lots of oral segmenting and blending. We read and write words with the new sound, and we give them a chance to apply this knowledge. So in the classroom, this is what this might look like. So the children will have a sound map and they are looking at the sounds that they have been taught and recapping these. It's really important when doing this, and you can do this at home with the children, that the children are learning both the letter name and the letter sound. So for example, they might say letter S, sound of S, letter A, sound of A. It's really important that they can tell you the sound and the letter name. Then we will do lots of oral segmenting and blending. This is really, really important to develop children's early reading skills. So for example, we would give them a word like rain, and they need to chunk that up into the sounds. We often get the children to use their robot arms. So they'd say a, n, and then to be able to blend that back together, rain. Sometimes you'll find that the children are really excellent at segmenting the words and splitting them up into the sounds, but find it quite tricky to then blend that back together. So we might then do the segmenting and they've got to do the blending. So we will go a, n, and they need to blend that back to us to practice the blending skills as well. You'll then see they get the opportunity to read and write with this new sound and then apply it. This might be through writing activities or reading activities. Obviously at home, this is where we would like your support with the application of the reading. The more you read with your children at home, the more they're exposed to applying these new sounds to help their reading development. So again, some of the ways you can help at home is just maybe having some flashcards or having a sound mat, even having a sound mat in the back of the car. So when you're driving to school, the children can be practicing telling you the letter names and the letter sounds. Using things like the Jolly Phonics rhymes, they're engaging. There's videos on YouTube of the sounds, especially if your children are in year 1 and are still practicing their initial sounds and their single letter sounds. And another really useful tool that you can use is a sound sayer online, which your teacher can send you a link to. This is really helpful for families where English might not be your initial language, your first spoken language at home. And this online tool helps you to pronounce the sounds correctly. So when you click on a sound, it will say the sound, and it will also give you some cards with some words that will contain that sound. So it's a really useful tool for you as a parent to support your child at home with pronouncing those sounds correctly. Here are some activities that you can do at home, again, to support those segmenting and blending skills. It doesn't always have to be that you're sat down reading a book with your child. That is really important, but especially for our early readers in Key Stage 1, just doing some simple activities just to have that constant practice and reinforcement of the segmenting and blending. So as I said before, we use our robot arms all the time in school. So when we're getting the children to read or to write and they're not too sure, can you sound it out using your robot arms? And this is something you could get the children to do at home. And using things like morning routines, if you're cooking, if you're baking with the children, by segmenting those words and getting them to blend. So for example, in the morning when you want the children to go and brush their teeth, you could say, right, I would like you to go and brush your teeth. And they will blend that together to follow that instruction, because you are helping them segment that out. And the more they hear that and the more they practice blending those sounds together, that's really going to help their fluency in reading develop. And this can be done in games like I Spy. Again, if you're driving to school, I spy a cat, and then they've got to tell you what you can see. Things like hoop jumping and playing games outside. There are lots of different fun activities, physical activities that isn't just getting your child to sit down and physically read. When you are reading with your children at home, here are some strategies we can help with the decoding. This means when they're actually trying to sound out the word that they are unfamiliar with. Sometimes we just want to give the word to the child because we don't like to see them find something tricky, but we actually really need them to have a go and find strategies so that when they're reading more independently, they have a bank of tools to help them if they do get stuck. The first way we would always encourage the children is to use their phonics. It's always the first thing we would go to. So can you sound out the sounds? Can you blend it together? If not, giving them other clues. For example, if the word is more than one syllable, so for children that are more developed readers and reading more challenging vocabulary, then can you split the words into syllables and then use your phonics to sound out each syllable at a time, then put it back together. And we can also look at the first letter in a word for a clue. We might cover the word up and carry on reading the sentence, and then hopefully other words in the sentence might give them a clue about what that missing word could be. And then also using the pictures. I think using the pictures is the easiest strategy to often go for. Like, look at the picture, what can you see? But that would probably be the last strategy we would suggest, because we want the children to really apply that phonics knowledge first. If the children are showing you that they're feeling quite confident, then obviously we're going to help them. We don't want to leave them to struggle, because we don't want to take that enjoyment away from reading. So obviously just use your own parental judgment. If they're finding it really tricky, you've tried all those strategies, then of course give them the word, and then just get them to maybe go back and have a go at sounding it out themselves. When we come to the language comprehension skills, and this is for all children who are early readers and developed readers, so from children in Key Stage 1 and in Key Stage 2, the focus is really on language, and this is why it's really important to read with your children at home. So the adult spoken language ranks lower in word complexity than what is found in children's books. So if we're not exposing them to books and reading with children and getting them to read to us, they're not going to be exposed to new words, new vocabulary. They won't be able to develop that understanding just from conversations we have with them as adults. So before reading with the children, it's really important to get them to make predictions about the text, look at the front cover, look at the title. You know, can you tell me what you think the story might be about? For older children, you might get them to link this to books they've read before. So can you link this to a story you've read before? Are there any similar characters you've seen before? Getting them to look at some of the key parts of a text. So can they find the title? Can they find where it says about the author? Can they look at the blurb on the back of the book and use that to make predictions about the story? Whilst you're reading with the children, we really want you to encourage them to track their reading. So some children find it quite difficult to just follow the words on the page. Often we can do this for them, but again, we want to make them independent readers in the end. So we want them to have a go at tracking this. So it might be with their finger, sometimes using a ruler underneath will help some children. As the children get older, they might not need this to help them, but it does really help support our youngest learners. We're asking them to decode the words on the page, but also asking them to tell you the understanding. And just by asking questions throughout the story as you're reading, so who was the character? Can you tell me what they did? Where did they go? So all those 5W questions. And then for our more developed readers, the higher order thinking questions. So again, continuing to make those predictions and starting to make inferences. So when we're reading, as I mentioned, we want the children to be able to decode the words on the page, but we need to check that they understand the words that they are reading. So if they do come across any vocabulary and it's unfamiliar to them, we want to check that they understand what that word means. Now, as adults, we often feel like we just want to give the children the answer and tell them what that means, but we want them to try and have a go at using strategies to work this out for themselves. So one strategy is to find words inside a word. So we call it kind of Kung Fu Panda the word, chop it up. Can you find a word within the word that you know the meaning of? So the example here, if the word was enjoyable, we found the word joy. So what does joy mean? It means to be happy. And just getting them and giving those prompts to help them, but not telling them the answer. Again, we can use a strategy of covering the word up and reading the rest of the sentence and seeing if that helps them make meaning of that unknown word. We can use the pictures again to help, and then also just using their knowledge of like grammar elements, like if it's got a capital letter, if the word has a capital letter, we know it must be somebody's name or it must be the name of a place. So getting them to just think about the meaning of words without telling them the meaning. When the child has finished reading the book, this is where we want to check for their understanding. So we want them to retell the story. Can they recall the main facts? the main characters without looking at the book. So at this point, we wouldn't want them to look back at the pages. We want them to just be able to retell it using their own words, to be able to summarize the main ideas. And in this, we want them to use appropriate vocabulary that links to the context of the text that they've been reading. Then we've got retrieval skills. For this, the children might want to use the text to go back to. So you're getting them to find more specific information in the story. For this, they might need to use their skimming and scanning skills. Particularly if it's a longer piece of text, we need to train children that we can't always read the full page again to get the information. We might need to find some key words or some key sentences to help us answer that question. An important skill for children as developed readers especially is inference skills. And this is where the children are thinking about the character's thoughts and feelings in a story. And these aren't answers that they can just get by looking in the story and finding a word. They might have to take words and think about what the meaning of that might be. So an example might be the character's mouth dropped open. So then we want them to use their previous experience of the world to think, if somebody's mouth falls open, what might that mean? How might they be feeling? What is their body language and their facial expression showing? So this does rely on their understanding of the world and their experiences of the world, which is why it's so important we read often with children, because the more books, the more genres of books that they're exposed to, the better their understanding of the world becomes, and they're able to make those higher order thinking skills and inferences about what they are reading. Also, one of the main important things after reading with your child is all about that growth mindset. Children who are reluctant to read are usually the children who aren't very confident. So we want to give them that growth mindset. And by giving them those strategies, rather than just giving them the answers all the time, will really help grow that growth mindset and make them realize that it's okay to make mistakes and give them the strategies to help overcome them. So praising the children if they have made mistakes. So if they use a strategy to help them, praise them for that. If they are at the point where, you know, they do need to be told that they've made an error, then just thinking about how we're wording that with the children. So this is what you said. Can you spot anything wrong with that? Does that make sense? And just having those conversations with the children. As well as your children reading to you, it's really important that you also read to your children, because particularly the children in Key Stage 1, if they are still practicing their decoding skills, then they are not reading text above their level and being exposed to that vocabulary. Where if you read to them, they can still show a real good understanding of what's being read, and they can show you those retrieval skills and the inference skills and those higher order thinking skills. But they might not be able to develop those if they're only reading books that are at their decoding level. So it's really important that there is a balance between the children reading and you reading to them. You can also use things like audio books. The children in school have access to Epic, where there are audio books and read to me books at all levels on there that they can be exposed to. So we want the children to mainly enjoy reading. We don't want reading to be seen as a task that they feel they're forced to do. However, it is something that the children need to be doing every day to support their reading at home. So there has been lots of strategies that I hope have been useful and will help you to support your child's reading at home. I can't stress the importance of making sure that this is something that is done daily. Just for 10 minutes a day will make all the difference to the child's reading development. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and your class teachers, who would be happy to send out particularly any of the phonics resources that will help you with that at home. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, and thank you for taking your time to listen.